Okay, so I had this idea to start this series where I tell you some utilities, some like weapons and consumables, ashes of war, spells that can be used for specific situations. Very specific situations. Before I do that though, I'd like to do this video where we talk about how I specifically approach invasion. This is the table of contents, what we're going to be talking about. The first thing is the build preparation and game plan, then spell slot configuration, then we will assess the situation, prioritize targets, execute the game plan, briefly discuss combat, maybe not briefly, and then improvise when everything is too much for you and you just need to have something ready to go when you're not exactly sure what to do in the moment. Improvise. So starting off, the first part is build preparation game plan. What this means is your character and the way you play them. First off, the stats. Depending on what kind of build you are, whether you're a strength build, a dex build, an arcane build, an int build, a faith build, a health only build, a super endurance build with defense like crazy, a tank, or some sort of combination of these. And then you want to choose your weapon, your ashes of war, your spells, the things you're going to be attacking people with or using to defend yourself. And that it's very important. The stats build around the weapons. The weapons are what you are planning on doing. Then you need the talismans. Typically the talismans give you more damage, more health. They make up for faults in the build. They make it easier to allocate stats. They give you more stats so that you can save stats for other stats. Your talismans become the most important part of your build once you've selected what weapon to choose, because your talismans allow you to do things in a percentage way once you already have all the stats that you want and the health that you need, such as the Axe Talisman, the Roar Medallion, the Radagon Icon, the Godfrey Icon. Those give you things normally wouldn't be able to have. Now, to be fair, the Radagon Icon not so much, because it's 30 effective virtual dexterity for cast speed. That one, once you have 70 dexterity, no longer provides you any benefit at all. I just wanted to mention it, as it is a very powerful talisman. Things such as the Ritual Shield or the Ritual Sword, very situational, very powerful. You can't get that just by leveling your stats, is what I'm trying to get at. Then you have your buffs. Your buffs also fall under the category that the talismans are trying to do, because normally you wouldn't have a percentage bonus without your buff active. But your buffs are temporary. They will run out. They can be removed from you. But they're important to have, because if you are at a lower level or even a higher level, you can push your damage output over a certain threshold, which allows you to surprise opponents with how powerful you are. Or you can prevent yourself from dying, not nearly as much as you could before, because the highest percent defense you can get is probably from Black Flame's protection, which also lowers how much you heal, but the point remains, defense is not as easily obtained as offense. Your defense should come from your armor, your stats, and not so much your buffs. Your buffs should be for damage, is what I'm saying. Unless you're in the arena. In the arena, it matters way more to have that defense bonus. In a one-on-one scenario, it becomes way more important. Especially when you can't heal, So next are your consumables. Your consumables are things you're going to be throwing at your opponent out of your pockets. You can craft them most of the time. Sometimes you can buy them. I heavily recommend gravity stone fans if you have strength or intelligence, even if it's like 20, maybe 15 even. They're just very effective on wake up. Manage to pancake or backstab, knock someone down out of the air. Any moment when someone's in iframes and they have to get up, you wait a second, you back away from them, throw down the gravity stone fan. They roll, they have to deal with it now. They can roll towards you, it's very easy to dodge, but the fact remains that they have to deal with it. So it forces them to give up their wake up opportunity. Things like that. Consumables are important. You could also use your consumables to buff, such as uplifting aromatic, or crab meat. But you need to think about which ones do you want, because you only have so many slots that you can put them into to allow you to access them very quickly. Next, we have healing options. Your healing options are also important. You don't really need to have them on hand all the time, because most of the time they're going to take too long or get stolen from you by multiple opponents rushing you, such as the Warming Stone, which is common to warmth, or comparable to warmth from Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2 especially, where it heals everything indiscriminately, and therefore anyone who's rushing you down can steal the warmth from you or share it as you fight each other, which is a fun idea when you do King of the Hill using warmth. But on top of that, you need to have things like Bestial Vitality, Warming Stones, Holy Ground, Divine Blessings now. We have Marika's Blessing. Regenerative effects, heal on kill effects, heal on backstab effects, not as common. FP Restoration, which is now much more infinite because of the talisman. You need to consider the ability for you to recover during downtime, where no one is attacking you. It's very useful. And then you need to think about what attack and when to do it. Attacks for close and for far distances. Your ranged options. Typically, I have a cannon ready to quick swap to, and I do this by making it so that I do not have an equipment in my first equipment slot. So when I open my equipment menu, I know I can push the select button, the X on PlayStation, I believe. Yes. And I can go up on the D-pad to go to the bottom of the list, push L2, left trigger, on my PlayStation controller, and I know there's a cannon there that I can then two-hand and shoot an enemy from far away, in case they're running into a boss room, such as the Fire Giant area. There are moments where I have a chance to shoot at someone from a far distance, and it comes in handy. Not as often as I'd like, but especially not lately, but it does come in handy. I do have compilations. Regardless, what I intend to say, for attacks for close and far distances, you need your close range attacks, your AoEs to keep people away from you, your mid-ranged attacks, your pressure tools to initiate with and to keep people from just kinda standing at a distance and waiting for you to make a move, and your long-range attacks, which is such your cannons, your great bow, your Loretta's Mastery, your Frenzied Burst, things to hit people who don't entirely know you're there yet, so that you can get a surprise attack on them. You do not get the damage bonus from a surprise attack like you do in PvE, but you still can hit them when they're not ready for you to attack them. And that's important. It's not always important, it's not completely necessary, but it's nice to have. And that is build preparation. Now, I will show you a couple of build ideas based on my characters, as it says right here, for show builds after number 7. We have melee builds. This one is a strength dex build that is a quality build, a term coined from Demon Souls. It's not an effective quality build. Like, it doesn't have enough dexterity to be called a quality build. It's more of a strength build, but the fact remains, both of them have been leveled, and I would have leveled dexterity higher, but it's actually better for my great bow. if I level strength to 54 more so than dexterity. So on top of that, we have bestial vitality, as I had mentioned, a restorative, and this is a buff for more damage. I haven't had time to use it yet. I want to see how much damage it will have. We have plenty of health, not quite as much as I'd like to have, but all of our talismans are set up to make the great bow do as much damage as possible. Because this is a gimmick for using the great bow, I do not need talismans actually do damage with my weapons, because I want to surprise one-shot people with the great bow. And this is a melee sort of character. It does physical damage. Can't exactly say it's a melee character because it's using the great bow as the center of focus. But as you can see, we do not have any sword seals on because we do not want to lower our defense. We have the equipment, the consumables I'm using. I keep the physic ready for a one-time use in my quick slot, where I hold triangle and push up on the D-pad, and I never do it again. Sometimes I forget. I have boluses for things that I believe I need to be prepared for. Frenzy doesn't come off as often as I would think it would, but it's still nice to have the protection against it when it does, and occasionally I will swap to sleep, because sleep is just as powerful. The blue flask I keep away from the red flask, specifically so that I don't accidentally use one instead of the other. I see this happen to other people very often. I recommend keeping them in different locations so that it does not. I have rock pots now in my quick bar. These two right here, those cannot easily be accessed. You have to open your menu in order to grab them. So I can only throw these pots if I open the menu and intentionally select it. The warming stone, the same thing. The warming stone, again, is a restorative. Therefore, I can only use it when I'm outside of combat. I have my great bolts and my great arrows ready. The golden ones can buff yourself. The Radon ones can go the farthest, and therefore they have the highest distance to damage ratio. They also get buffed by the Lion Great Bow, but I'm no longer using that because the setup that I have makes it so that the Great Bow is the best one. And also you can't change the Ash of War on Radon's bow, or the Lion Great Bow. We have a Frenzy Flame Seal because it weighs nothing. And the armor is just for fashion. Armor should mostly be for fashion. If you don't look good, then no one's going to remember you. Moving on, we also have an actual quality build. The same idea is translated here, is shown right here. We have a buff for more damage, and the healing, Bestial Vitality. Flame grant me strength and Bestial Vitality. We also have rejection, because in some cases, you get an opportunity to throw someone off a cliff. Now, it hasn't happened in a long time, but it is an option. You could stand next to a cliff as someone chases after you, and use rejection to push them off. It is a possibility, especially with 80 dexterity. So this is a true quality build. We have 54 strength and 80 dexterity. Now we're not exactly getting that two-handed bonus, I don't think, because I'm using paired weapons, the ornamental straight swords, as you can see right here. This is the golden epitaph. Don't worry about it yet. I will explain it in a moment. And naturally we have 60 vigor, so that we have more health. We also have Erdtree's Favor +2 on because I wanted the stamina. And also I have permanent light load because this is level 200 and I can do whatever I feel like. If you feel like level 200 isn't a high enough level to do whatever you want, something is wrong with your build. Because if I can make a build like this, and I can destroy people with a weapon that's not all that great, you need to think a little bit harder about where your stats are going. Maybe about your talismans. So thinking about a quality build can use essentially any weapon in the whole game. I decided to use one for fun. The ornamental straight swords have a buff that changes their R2. It allows you to hit people multiple times. So we have consecutive attack up buffs, including in our physic. And that allows us to increase the amount of damage that we do as we hit people. So if they get caught in the flurry, I have a video about this, then it does a lot of damage. And since then, we've also gotten the Rakshasa set. allows me to have 2% more damage, and I like to think it fits this outfit. I think it looks pretty good. Especially the red, you know? It's a little more red than I'd like right here, but it fits the idea, and that's the point. So the Golden Epitaph adds a Golden Vow sort of effect that buffs your attack, your defense, but it also adds a very flat plus 25 holy damage. So the ornamental straight swords have a buff that applies holy damage to them in addition to modifying the R2 of the weapon. So what that means is this buffs that effect to be even more potent to 125 instead of just 100 holy damage. And then that scales even better with the consecutive attack. Now, I'm not sure about keeping this freezing hefty pot right here. I'm probably going to switch that out at some point. I wanted it for fun. This is my fun build that I play when I just want to mess around and do whatever. And we still haven't gotten those magic great bolts, I see. I'm going to have to do that later. And we have Crab and Warming Stones. I have Warming Stones on all my characters. Also, I forgot to switch out the Torrent Ring. I'll have to remember to do that too for Frenzy boluses. I've also got the 2-finger heirloom specifically so that we can use Flame Grant Me Strength, which I realized, hey, I could get even more damage if I use this buff. Before I was using the Serpent God Curved Sword so that I could get a little bit of a heal, and I had the opportunity to use something that had hyper armor such as Endure or Gravitas, but now I'm decided, let's just go full damage. Let's get all the damage I could possibly get. Maybe I can get a one-shot with just the second part of the flurry instead of doing the second part and then final part roll catches. We'll see. It's still a little bit of a work in progress. That's part of the point of making a character. The point of making a build, having fun, is testing things and seeing if they work. Not so much winning using a very strong ability, but winning while having fun, trying to make something that doesn't really get seen all the time work a bit against people who are just trying to play the game, I guess. I don't know. It's fun. It's fun. So moving on, we also have a dexterity build. Ignore all these spells. They are in a position that I could explain them well, but they're really just there in case I wanted to change this character into a level 200 temporarily, which is an idea more people should experiment with. If you back up your save file, you can level up your character and then revert your save file in case you weren't satisfied with the invasions you had at that higher level. So, this is essentially a base dexterity build. We are level 77. We have a modest amount of health. It's not quite as much as I'd like. It's pretty good for this level, though. Personally, I always try to stay at 1800. This is a little lower, but it's really not that bad. What's really bad is our defenses. You see our lightning has tanked because it's raining. But that's pretty normal. There's nothing you can do about that. And we have 40 dexterity, 20 strength. You can, in the old days, you could have called this a quality build if we had 7 more strength, but nowadays, 5480 is quality, which is funny. Very funny. We have 52 vigor because we have to. And the build makes it so that we have all this dark armor that doesn't really reflect all that well. I changed the gloves. They used to be gauntlets that were black and gold. They healed me when I was low health, the Royal Remains ones, but now I think it fits a bit more. It was specifically so that I could fit on the bone bow, because the bone bow is a little bit heavier than the red branch short bow. And we have to keep on the concealing veil and the trick mirror, specifically so that we can continue to be stealth. It's a lot harder for people to take notice of someone who's not glowing red, you know? We have our consumables set up right here. I haven't really talked about this too much yet. You have the sparking aromatic, because it functions similarly to the gravity stone fans idea. You have to free aim it a little behind where they could go, because it has a lingering sort of hitbox, and they will roll into it sometimes. And it's more important to stay close to them for this, because you want it to go over them and be kind of hanging in the air for a moment. But Spark Aromatic has a similar idea to Gravity Stone fans. I use it the same way, except for its dexterity. It does fire damage, and it doesn't stick to the ground. So you can kind of just throw it out whenever. It's gonna work while you're on an elevator, not while it's moving though, but yeah, Gravity Stone fan has that restriction. It's a different idea. We got freezing pots. I love freezing pots. Freezing pots cause frost, which, because this is Elden Ring, frost causes hit stun. It interrupts whatever they're doing if they get frosted. It lowers all their defenses by 20%, which is a ridiculous amount. And probably not so much in PvP. I haven't actually done the math or looked at the math that other people have done, but it lowers defenses. That means your damage is higher now. So if they cure it, you just do it again, and they take another like 300 damage, 200 damage, I'm not sure. And other than that, you can just stun them out of something they're trying to do from a distance. So it's just nice to have, because it's not guaranteed that like a giant's flame pot would hit someone out of a dragon roar if they had the poise to resist that, you know? Freezing ignores that, so that's why I like it. It's also really easy to make. You just need 2 rhymed crystal buds, which you can find plentifully around the giant trees where there's like rune bears and the blood dogs in the consecrated snowfield. I'd have to check if there were any in the mountaintops of the giants, but typically I would just go to the consecrated snowfields around that area. There's a lot of them. And then we have throwing knives. I keep these around in case someone is using the Opaline Bubble Tier or the Uplifting Aromatic. It's very easy to just throw this out. It pops their bubble, and you don't have to worry about it. You can also do that with freezing pots, I'd like to mention. If you manage to hit someone who has a bubble up while using a freezing pot, it will do full damage. It will pop the bubble. Because it's a status effect, that's why it will do full damage. The pot itself also does a tiny amount of damage. I think like 13, it's got like a tiny amount of magic damage to it, which is interesting, but it makes sense. So that's why it still pops the bubble, I think. I don't think it would if it didn't. I mean, if you hit them directly, it would, but yeah. Then yes, we have the boluses. The bleed boluses are very important. So many people use bleed. I'm using bleed right now. So it's nice to have when you have a moment when people are not being very aggressive. You pop a bolus. Make sure that they're not going to jump attack you. They're not in jumping heavy range, you know. Sometimes you do it to dare them to do it. It's a mind game thing. And then the frenzy, the clarifying boluses. Same idea. Frenzy's really dangerous. Always nice to have. Just at the ready when you need it, you know. Keep the flasks away from each other. Make sure you do not mix them up. Keep a hefty pot right here so that I can throw it in situations where I get the opportunity to. I like the normal hefty lightning over the red lightning because the red one really, the chain that it does doesn't really do all that much damage right now. Maybe it will later. It's kind of interesting that it does that. It doesn't really have a bigger splash to it, so I'm just going to keep the normal one. Maybe the ritual version is better. I haven't really tried it out, but they're cool. They're cool, they're neat. There's the warming stone for the healing again. And we have our arrows set up because we are using the bow. I like to poison people or sleep them depending on what is happening. If they're annoying, I'll sleep them. If they're not, I'll poison them. The poison forces them to do something or else they take a lot of damage. If they try to cure it, I shoot them with the Stormwing arrow. It's a method. And then the Great Bolts are, again, this spot is open. I can switch very quickly to a cannon and shoot someone from far away if I want to. Also, the 20 dexterity, the 20 strength, 40 dexterity. That's so that I could use the Bolt of Grand Sax if I felt like it. So I believe that's it for our melee-based characters, yes. Oh no, we had one more. We had one more strength character. Okay. So this is a strength build with Arcane. I changed it to Arcane recently. It was just strength and faith. And I realized I already have strength, faith. This was strength as Arcane now. So we have a lot of health. We have very tanky stats because strength raises defense quite a lot. Your flat defense, not your percent defense. Your percent defense is based entirely on your armor. So that's why it could be more useful to have heavier armor if you're feeling like you're taking a bit too much damage. But if you can't fit that, don't worry about it. As long as your defenses are, I guess, 20% or higher. I would recommend 20% or higher. See, our elemental defenses are kind of low. Not too bad, though. We got a lot of holy resistance because we're an arcane build now. You can never really do anything about your lightning resistance, so you see someone with lightning, you should be upset at them. So, we don't have as much health as I'd like. We still have more than the other build, the archer one, and I think all the other builds on here, which is funny because it's mostly because of the medallion. The Crimson Amber medallion plus 3 lets us get away with a lot of things. So this new weapon came out, Ancient Meteoric Ore Great Sword, the Amog Sword. It is fun. I didn't change this build to use it. I changed it because I was like, you know what, I've had enough. I don't have a strength arcane build, let's start using one. And then it just happened that it weighs as much as the Watchdog Great Sword, and I was like, you know what, there's no reason not to, so this is now this build's weapon. And then I have Dane's Footwork in the offhand, specifically because it makes sense for the character. The armor looks nice, I'd like to think. Maybe not from this angle. Two-handed sword talisman. You should always use it if you're using a two-handed weapon. Unless you're switching very often, you know? Running attacks. Didn't know what else to put on here. I guess I could put on the Outer God Heirloom. Maybe save 5 points, put them into health. Probably not going to, though, because as I said, your talismans are very important. These two things, the two-sword talisman, the lacerating frost tree, I think it's called. Those things give you a % damage bonus that you cannot get any other way, so that's very powerful. Crimson Amber plus 3, or Tree's Favor plus 2, those just make up for some stats that I don't have, so very nice to have. The health bonuses, you can't get those any other way, that's also beneficial, but there's a defense to health ratio thing where we can get into the mathematics about it, where it's actually more useful to wear the Blessed Dew talisman in certain circumstances, which is why the Crimson Amber medallion weighs less than the Blessed Dew. So, other than that, because this is a strength build, we can use the Gravity Stone fans. We have the Hefty Rock Pot, so we can use a projectile. At mid-range, we can throw this at people, or if we feel like it, you know. If they're running away from me, I have caught a few people with it, it's fun. The fan daggers to pop bubbles, the boluses to stop ourselves from getting stunned from status effects. The Cerulean Flask away from the Crimson Flask, the Wondrous Physic over here by itself for the same reason. The Crab Meat, whenever I'm going up an elevator or running into a group of enemies, it's nice to have more defense, and we have the Sun Warmth Stone instead of the Warming Stone because we have a bit more health and it's nice to regenerate very quickly. So that is all the melee sort of stuff. So that out of the way. Next up we have spell slot configuration. Now this is also going to be complicated, as it looks. So spell slot configuration, you're playing a spellcaster, right? We're going to be talking about that after this. Or during this, we'll see. So, your first slot is the most important, because you can return to it very easily by holding up on the D-pad. Therefore, it should be a spell that you use very often, typically with low FP cost. It has high speed, or it has hyper armor. So, you can switch to it very quickly. So you should be able to use it very easily, is what I'm saying. Or you should make sure it's something important to have. And yeah, let's go ahead and open this now so that I can talk about it. Let me get rid of this. Okay, so not this one. Let's talk about this one first. Not that one. This one. Nope, that's the same thing. Okay. I guess I did this with all my characters. So yeah, you can see I'm pretty consistent in this. So let's talk about this one. The Magnum Opus has it so that they can use all sorts of weird spells and force them to work together. And this is very complicated, and I do not recommend ever trying to do this yourself, not at level 90 at least, like I am, because I'm insane, and I like to force things to work, and boy is it fun. So, Massive Vortex of Putrescence, is an AoE that detonates an area around you when you cast it. So like, it sends out a giant spiral, which if that giant spiral hits anyone who's standing on the edge, it will also do damage, which is fun. And then if they walk towards you, or they're like at the perfect spot, they'll get hit again by the fire that then encircles the area that it hit. So Massive Putrescence, Vortex of Putrescence is something that I like to throw out when people are chasing me, because it basically makes a minefield behind me that they have to walk through. So, it's very effective, because people just run right into it. Or at least they have been, anyway. And on top of that, I can use it offensively. It's very nice to have. It's not an initiator. It's more of the AoE sort of idea, where it's just nice to have in situations where I'm panicking, or situations where, like, okay, I need this, I need to use it now. It's very fun. So that's the first spell slot. I have another character, Lightning Spear, on this one. So Lightning Spear needs to be ready because it's the main point of this character. It's very fast. It's a good projectile. It's not very expensive. It's not technically very fast unless you have a lot of cast speed, but that's why we have the Radagon icon, so that's the idea. You want to have one of those things ready. So your second slot through your fourth slot are spells you will be using very often for general attacks, such as projectiles and area of effects. Slot 3 especially should be used for a hyper armor move if you choose to have one. This is to say, you do not need a hyper armor move as a spellcaster because you're gonna run into someone who's using jumping heavies or colossal sword that you cannot armor through anyway, so... And then, you know, there's gonna be people shooting projectiles at you. It's really only effective against, like, thrusting swords, who can probably hit you out before you begin to get into the hyper armor frames. Straight swords, who probably do a jumping L1 against you using the power stance. I haven't really seen as many straight swords anymore. Katanas, lots of katanas. They're gonna hit you with Unsheath or the Moonveil beam attack, so Transient Moonlight. You really aren't going to get an incredible amount of use out of your hyper armor attack. Now, you can still use it. I would just use it in more like enclosed areas where you need to fill the area without really getting interrupted. There's also a couple of hyper armor attacks where it's okay for you to get interrupted, such as one that I'm trying to use, specifically on this character, which is Crystal Release. Once you get interrupted from Crystal Release, the spell still keeps going. So it's actually a good thing, because now you can follow behind it while it's blasting all over the place. So that's nice to have. But as you can see, I've considered that to be a little more important, or a little less important, which is why it's in the first slot, so I can skip over it very quickly, but still have access to it for fun whenever I needed it. So moving from that, the second slot, the third slot, and the fourth slot. The second slot is a projectile on this character. It's a defensive AoE on this character. The third slot is a projectile on this character. And then this one, another projectile, and then an armored move, and then an armored move for the fourth slot as well, a different variant of it. And then this one, an armored move in the third slot, projectile in the second slot. In the fourth slot, though, the fourth slot becomes a bit more variable. You can have something where you want a projectile that's a bit slower than your other projectiles, that travels a distance and forces, like, you can walk behind it maybe, like with giant golden arc over here. Something I've been using a lot lately on this character, now that I have the faith for it. It moves very slowly, and it has this weird tracking if you lock onto someone when you fire it. Excuse me. So, it's a setup projectile, which we talk about next. So slots 4 through 6 should be spells best used in moments where targets are not attacking you, but within range of your spells, so at a medium distance is what I call it. Especially initiating spells you can follow behind, and setup spells that take a moment to cast, but chain into other spells that force people into situations you can hit them. Now I don't mean like spell casting chain, like how you could chain Honed Bolt into Lightning Strike, or Comet into Spiral Shard. What I mean is you can combo them in a way where one of them is chasing after the opponent, like Spiral Shard does, or Giant Golden Arc does, or Glintstone Blade? Carrion Glint Blade, I think it's called. That one, the Magic Glint Blade, the one that the prisoner starts out with, that like spawns over your head, charges up for a second, and then fires at the target. Those are initiating spells. spells you can follow behind and set up. Other spells. They take a moment to cast, but you can do other stuff while they're doing it, is what this means. So it forces people to deal with those spells so that they have to react in a more specific way. Their options are more limited, or they get hit in the face. Those are very important when you're playing a spellcaster. It could just be second nature to some people, but we need to explain that. So, initiating spells are spells where you cast them, and then you can do other stuff behind that spell while it's still going. So what that means is you could use one of the phalanx spells, you could run up to an opponent. Now the phalanx ones I don't recommend as much because they will fire as you're running up, and you can't really control it unless you turn around, which means you have to unlock, and it becomes a bit more of an ordeal of like getting it to work. But if you do, your opponent might roll because they think, oh, the blades are firing, but then you have to know the specific timing for when the blades would fire, the specific distance for when the blades would fire. You need to react to your opponent rolling. It's part of the idea. It's part of the idea. So it's way easier to just throw something out and then try to do melee stuff. So, other than that, you could throw something out and then just start barraging them with magic from a distance. It's not recommended because that's going to cost a lot of FP, but you can do that. But yeah, that's 4 through 6. So we'll look at these. So my initiator spell on my all magical character, the Magnum Opus, that can cast whatever it really feels like, is the Giant Golden Arc. Now, anyway. It used to be like Magic Glint Blade. I had other options too, but this is the one I'm liking at the moment. And I can follow that up with a Glintstone... I forget what they're called. It's a Glint Nail. I think it is Glintstone Nail. So yeah, Glintstone Nail, very cheap. 10 FP to cast. A little slower than I'd like to initially cast, because I don't have any cast speed on this character. But once it starts going... it can hit people who jump, it can hit people who like try to jump over the arc, people who try to roll through the arc, it'll come back towards them, people who run away, it'll keep going after them and a little bit faster catch up to the golden arc. If they run away, and there's not a whole lot I can do about that, but now I have freedom to do whatever I want. So I can follow that up with a Glintstone Scrap, which goes as far as Loretta's Great Bow does. Not Loretta's Mastery. Nothing goes as far as Loretta's Mastery, but Glintstone Scrap goes very far. So I can follow these up with that, and do a little bit of chip damage, and make them remember, hey, you're not getting away that easily. So then we have another armored move, Frozen Lightning Spear. This is a gimmick. We don't have 10 slots, because these two cost 2. We have 8 slots. So 4 through 6, 4, 5, 6. This one is a gimmicky sort of idea. I put it here specifically so I could have lightning. You can also throw lightning spears that are like the ground-based ones, like the Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear, the Fortisax's Lightning Spear, the Frozen Lightning Spear, as we see right here. You can throw them downwards a short distance, not very far. They go pretty far, but not very far. And then they will spawn their, like, effect wherever they collide into the ground at. So Frozen Lightning Spear I have on here for fun. But this character has Fire Serpent and Flame of the Fell God. Their initiating attack is Flame of the Fell God, because it slowly floats over to people. And then they can follow that up with Fire Serpent, which will quickly float over to people and immediately do damage. Flame of the Fell God, however, is something I've fallen in love with, because it causes an explosion that causes knockdown. It slowly floats towards people, and you can follow after it, which is a similar thing you can do with Gravitational Missile now. So, it slowly floats over to people, and you can follow after it. It explodes after a set amount of time, and does a significant amount of damage, and then it leaves an area of effect on the ground that will stun people who bump into it, who don't have the poise to get, like, not stunned by it, you know? And it does a little bit of fire damage. So it's just fun, you know? It takes 2 slots, 41 faith, but if you can throw this out there, you can follow up behind it. People can't see through it because it's a giant fireball. So I throw some fire serpents behind it, and they don't really see them coming all the time. It's nice. It's very nice. Like, you can just follow stuff behind it. But that's it for that character. After that, they have buffs. So, moving on, 6 to 10 are at the far end of your spell slots. It should be reserved for slower spells with more niche uses. Ones you won't use very often or will only use at the start of combat, when no one is aware you are there. You may also include spells you think are cool but not as effective. So, on that idea, we have Electro Charge, which is not very good. It's an AoE lightning attack, which is why I have it on this character. We can just use Fortisax's Lightning Spear or Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear, which we're not going to because we have Fortisax's, but Electrocharge has the additional effect of giving you an AoE that does like 17, 15 damage. It's not very much, but the initial explosion does a decent amount of damage. A good like 600, 800 damage. Especially if you have charged stuff, which we do not. But these are buffs. These are things that I will use at the end of this character, and then we will never use them again. We will go through a rotation of these spells, these incantations. We will initiate with Flame of the Fell God, follow it up with Fire Serpent, and then we will punish people with Lightning Spear who try to heal, because I can do that. I can throw a Lightning Spear if someone tries to heal, and it will hit them out of their heal if I knew they were going to try to do that. And it's hard to know that. And sometimes you just do it because you think it will happen. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you're just like, now would be a good time for you to heal, so I'm not going to give you the opportunity to do that, and I throw a Lightning Spear at them, right? And then you have the Knight's Lightning Spear, which is a bit harder to dodge, because it can spawn up to 6 projectiles. Is it 6? I think it spawns 4, and then you throw the middle one, and it spawns 6 if you fully charge it and you throw the middle one. So it goes 7. Really. That's pretty cool, but only if you fully charge it. So basically it's the big punish, or the, okay, you don't know I'm here, I'm gonna throw this at you and you might die. Or it's like, okay, you're distracted by an enemy, I'm still attacking you, so if you get hit by this, you might die. That's what the idea is. So, with Frozen Lightning Spear, it's really just here for fun. It's a lightning, it's blue. This character wants to have all the lightning stuff, so they do. And Fortisax is the main big damage one. Something important to do that I didn't put in the information, now that I think about it. When you're invading, like before you invade, as you're like using the finger searching for a world, you want to select the spell that is your strongest AoE spell. So that if people are directly next to you, and they aren't aware that you're in iframes, you can just blow them up. You can punish them very heavily. You are ready for that, you are gonna blow them up, and then after that, you do your setup, where I throw out Flame of the Fell God and Fire Serpents to see what they will do. Or, if they're nowhere near me, I throw a Lightning Spear because they don't know that I'm next to them. And see, that's the game plan. And so, let's talk about the game plans. Start at the beginning now. So, Massive Putrescence is here as an AoE to keep people from running after me, or as an AoE to pressure people who I've knocked down. I can use that instead of Gravity Stone Fan. The Gravity Stone Fan is less expensive and more likely to actually hit them, though, because it takes longer to cast Vortex of Putrescence, but it's still very effective, especially since they buffed the freezing status effect that it gets. Blood Boon is also on here for fun. Everything should be on here for fun. You should be having fun. Blood Boon is here. I throw it out, and I have to free aim it. It's a projectile that I use to initiate and to bully people who are being passive. Because if they're not attacking me, then I have plenty of time to just throw this on the ground, and then they're afraid to touch it because it does bleed. It does blood flame, in fact. And if they're blocking, and they're holding block while they're in it, then it hits multiple times, and it's very funny when I bleed people on a Frost character, so... Briars of Sin is an AoE that does magic damage. I tested it. It gets boosted by Terra Magica. It does magic damage. It causes bleed buildup, and if people are right next to you, they're doing running attacks, and they're just thinking, oh, I'm gonna attack into the mage, you use Briars of Sin. Once it starts doing the cast, you have a lot of hyper armor. You can't tank a jumping heavy still from most sources. I think maybe a rapier you could tank that, a thrusting sword, but probably not. Probably not. Especially not with 38 poise that we have here. You're probably not going to be tanking that, but you can still tank stuff. The basic, like, ground-based are running R1s, not from a colossal sword. Probably not a running R2 of a great sword or a great axe. Maybe not a mace either. And probably not an axe anymore now that I think about it, but most people use katanas. And so if they're doing running attacks against you, or you get the opportunity, like I said earlier, to just do an AoE, you have a bit of armor on it now, they can't hit you with a rolling attack out of it, so when they get up, Briars of Sin, they're right next to you, you can chain it. You can chain it 3 times. Never do the 3rd one unless you know it's going to kill, though, but the point remains. Briars of Sin's chained AoEs will roll catch them if they're right next to you. They are guaranteed to hit if the opponent is right next to you when you initially hit them. So, very powerful in certain circumstances, which is what all this build is. So, Giant Golden Arc is our initiator. We cast that and then we run behind it, or we cast a Glintstone Nail and we see what happens. Frozen Lightning Spear is our lightning aspect. It's specifically here because it's lightning, and it's cool, literally. It's frozen, so it also applies frost. It's not very likely. The after effect is not the big part. The interesting thing about it is we can throw it down an elevator shaft. It's also another hyper armor move that we could use in very specific circumstances to look flashy. And then I forget what this is called. Collapsing Stars. Collapsing Stars specifically is a very fun sorcery you can use to pull people off of cliffs. It's very hard to get an attack that can pull someone. I like to have Gravitas or Collapsing Stars. Charging it makes it go through poise more, so it could be more useful to do that. You pull them off the ledge, they fall and die. It's amazing. On top of that, you can use it as a normal attack. It's very hard to dodge the entire thing unless you are ready to dodge it. And then we have, at the end, because this character does not use buffs, a very slow AoE that also debuffs anyone it hits and pushes them off of cliffs. Very fun to do that. Grail's Roar. Something that this character had 28 Faith and 17 Arcane specifically to use because of the idea that I can debuff them on spawn, and now the fight will be a lot easier for me, because I was using Marika's Soreseal, so I thought, oh, if I have Crab Meat going and Grail's Roar debuffing them, then I don't have to do that. But then I added a bunch of heirlooms, and now I don't need to do that anymore. So this is a very, very complicated mathematically build. It is very stressful to play. I do not recommend it. We also have Hefty Pots because I realized I can use Hefty Pots for the same thing I was using Cannon of Haima for, so now we do that instead. And the Dark Moon Greatsword carries the build. We can use it with base stats, and it does a lot of damage whenever I run out of magic. Because that happens pretty often, actually. You are correct. The 9 FP. Oh, something I forgot to mention. I wrote it on my phone. Let me get that real quick. So for melee builds, you only need 1 Cerulean Flask and 6 Crimson Flasks. But on Sorcerer builds, you should have 5 Crimson Flasks and 2 Cerulean Flasks. Now, you can get away with doing that anyway, because if you kill a Blue Phantom, you're going to get 2 of each back. So if you had 2 Cerulean Flasks, you'll get 2 of those back. And especially if you're playing a Faith melee build like this one, who has regenerative aspects using Heal from Afar, that's really beneficial to get 4 flasks that all can heal you, right? So it's not as recommended because it takes a bit longer to actually use a healing incantation, but it's still an option you can do. And each FP bar, because as you can see, I don't really level my mind all that much at all. This is the most I've ever had at 26. I do not level my mind. You should treat your FP bars as phases of your gameplay. That is to say, your first FP bar before you restore it should be used as your initiating phase. and then you should restore or throw maybe one projectile if you have enough FP after that. And then you should play more seriously, using things specifically when you need them, applying their effects depending on how the gameplay goes. So if someone's at mid-range and you need to initiate, go back to your initiator, do that once. If someone's at mid-range, they're not doing anything, throw out your projectile, and then force them to just kind of sit there, maybe do your initiator again, depending. You can kind of just mess with them. And if people are rushing you, you don't have any FP or anything, your next choice should either be equip your two-hand your weapon if you're using one, or get away. Like, there's nothing you can do if you don't have any FP, if you're playing a pure caster like this one. This is a pure caster. I know I have the dry leaf arts, but that's just so I can be funny. And also in situations where, like, I'm out of FP, I want to win still, I'm not out of options, I'm going to punch you in the face, you know? So this build is designed to one-shot people to an extent. As you can see, we're at level 77, we have 62 faith, we have nothing but buffs to our faith damage. It's very nice and very powerful. So I hit people with lightning spear. Lightning is the least resistant element. It hurts, they die, I don't need health, I only need damage. I actually, on this build, have more health than most other people, so it's very funny. This character is a much higher level, so as you see, I have 30 faith for no reason. I could probably take away some faith now that I think about it, put it into maybe dexterity for faster cast speed, or mind for more FP that I don't need, because I can two-shot people with Comet, because, again, I just put all the talismans into doing damage. And this is supposed to be like a Bloodborne sort of character. You say we're Kos kin, you know, like Kos or Cosm is a Bloodborne thing. Kin is the opposite of beast in Bloodborne, so we've got Millennia's Great Rune just for the idea. And we're using a flail, which looks all like cosmic, you know. I could just call this Cosmic Pallydan, which is kind of why I did in that video, but we're supposed to look like a choir from Bloodborne. There's the choir is a more magical related hunter group that's controlled by the church. And they have this white sort of cape thing, and everything else is sort of black. I couldn't get it quite the way I wanted. Their face is the blindfold mask, so the closest thing was something that covers our face. At the very least, we need to cover our eyes, and so the page hood, it's fashion. And then we have a whip with Bloodhound Step on it. And a bell, because the bell for Bloodborne. And again, we also have Iron Jar, because we have Bloodhound Step. We can get away with using Iron Jar. I temporarily go into Light Roll, even though I only have 9 Endurance right here. You really don't need Endurance. Endurance is just trying to limit you. Endurance and Dexterity are just trying to limit you. FP, Mind's also just trying to limit you. Just get good. Just don't worry about it. I don't know. If you can't, you know, it's still nice to have. You don't need all that much. Especially when Mind doesn't really level up your FP all that much. Like, we only have double what this character has. And this character has 9. We had to put 17 points into Mind in order to get double. Like, actually, 75 times 2 is 150. This is just 2 points more than that. 17 points in Mind, we only get double. That makes sense, though. Because at this point, I can do like 4 casts of Comet, and all of those Comets do 800 damage. So, I'm two-shotting people if I charge the first one, especially because I've got the Godfrey icon. And then because I didn't really need it, I decided to put on the Blue Blessed Dew talisman to restore my FP even more. I had the Crimson Seed +1, but then I was like, why? I don't need it. I'll just do this. I could even put on the Graven School talisman, but The fact remains, Massive Putrescence, I use it the same way I do my other character, but now it's a bit faster. If people are chasing behind me, you know, Briars of Sin, again, it's an AoE. It does blood stuff, which is why it's on this character, because it's Bloodborne. Comet, our main source of damage. I shoot people twice and they die. Fleeting Microcosm, very good AoE. A ranged AoE. Ranged AoEs are probably the best attacks in all of Elden Ring. Collapsing Stars, pull people off a cliff. And then our setup. Our long-range setup. Now this is our one-time only thing, but our long-range setup is Terra Magica into Loretta's Mastery. If people are not aware of me, then I can throw down Terra Magica and do Loretta's Mastery, full charge it for the Godfrey icon bonus, and then blast it at them no matter how far away they are, as long as I can lock onto them. And then most of the time they die. And we have Rilana's Twin Moons for fun. I had Rilana's Full Moon, but Rilana's Twin Moons are fun. So we're using that for now. Rilana's I might go back to eventually, but right now I'm using Renala's. Is it Renala or Rilana? Which one is which? I don't remember. Okay. Anyway. This is an arcane intelligence build. It's very weird, but the staff, the blue staff, the Albinaric staff, scales with arcane, so we have Rivers of Blood for fun. I'm really not sure if I want to use Moonveil Rivers of Blood or the Starline Sword on this character, but I figured out that you can temporarily get like 64 effective dexterity for casting at just 24 dexterity. So we put dexterity plus 10 physic in my Wondrous Physic, and then I have on the Radagon icon, which adds effectively 30 more dexterity, so we have 40 more dexterity. We still have 300 something intelligence scaling. It's very fun. I looked at a list for cast speed, and 64 was a really good spot to reach for dexterity for all of your cast speed needs, and every time you reached a point higher in the casting speed tiers, you get one more frame faster on all of your spells, or well, not all of your spells, whichever ones have that ability. Each one is individually different, so something like Crystal Release really benefited from it. Fleeting Microcosm, not quite as much, but still pretty good. Oracle Bubble, if you're charging things, it doesn't really matter, but it's still nice to have. So the way this character works, we got the armor move, we got a projectile that's slow moving, we can kind of follow behind it, and it's sort of weird and hard to dodge, low cost. Kind of throw it out there, see what happens. Fleeting Microcosm, really good AoE. Hits twice, big explosion, you can charge it, it looks really pretty. Adula's Moonblade, also a very interesting choice. You can kind of slash in front of you, and also it shoots a projectile, works similarly to Moonveil, where you can get hit by both parts. The projectile's a little bit slower, you have to respect it. If people are just spamming it, you have to run up and hit them. It's very hard to deal with. Much better than Carrion Greatsword anyway. Oracular Bubble, very slow setup projectile. I can throw it out there. If they forget about it, it explodes. It hurts a lot if it actually hits them. And if it actually hits them, then they're stunned for a long time, and then I can hit them with something else. Especially if I also set up using a magic Glint Blade. The Glint Blade hits behind them after the bubble hits them, and then both of those things hit, and I can do whatever I want. And then I can follow up. They're probably dead after that, honestly. We have Collapsing Stars, the same reason as always, pull people off a cliff, it's hard to dodge, does a good amount of damage. And then we have our setup, which is Terra Magica into Big Explosion. And also I have Eternal Darkness, because it's weird, and it counters other magic builds. This character is supposed to be weird. They're an Intelligence Arcane build, that's weird. They're also level 117, which is specifically to avoid level 150. It's not really that much better than 132. 132, honestly, yeah, I don't actually benefit too much from avoiding level 150. It's better at 167, like this character is, because 167 invades into 150 at the highest level you can possibly reach from, because of how it rounds down. You see, this is, okay, it rounds up, So 16.7 is 10% of 167. Because the end is a 7, it rounds up, so that's 17. So it goes down by 17, and that's 150, so that means I invade into 150s. And I know this for sure. We have recorded evidence of me invading people who were level 150. If they drop 6,051 runes, that means they're level 150. So, just to mention, we have the microcosm, we have all those things. We still have the hefty pot. Maybe I should take off Canon of Haima if I have the hefty pot, replace it with Loretta's Mastery. Can I even use Loretta's Mastery? I don't think I can actually use Loretta's Mastery. It requires 46 intelligence, so maybe I'll think of something else to do with that. But for now, we have Canon of Haima. Maybe I'll switch it up a bit later. That I've realized that I got Poison Bones specifically because they scale with Arcane. Sleep Pots because they scale with Arcane. I needed more Arcane stuff. Before I was thinking I didn't have any Arcane things. I could scale stuff with the Arcane. Let's use Sleep Pots and Poison Bow. So, Faith build. Melee Faith build. So something like this, you might not be completely sure how it works, right? Like a Faith melee build that has 62 Faith and not much else. Again, we don't really need mine. We have our initiator at the start because we have all these fun things at the end, and this is focused on a melee playstyle. So I throw out a giant golden arc. Before I was using Fire Serpent, but then I was like, this is a holy build. We should do holy things. And then giant golden arc, wrath from afar, black blade, and light of Mikella. Now, light of Mikella requires 72 faith, so we can only use it for a little while, but it's very fun. This build's just fun. Black blade, I never use it. It's not very good, but if I kill someone with it, it's very funny. So, Scarlet Aeonia, however, is physical damage. I've tested it. You cannot block the petals, the lingering effect. It inflicts very good rot damage. I don't know if it's actually stronger than a rot pot. I'd have to test it. And it takes 3 slots. So Black Blade, Scarlet Aeonia, and Light of Mikella all take a lot of slots. So we only have 6 slots, which is crazy. This character's weird. It mostly relies on its ability to just attack people with melee. But then it just got to use all these fun things. It's like Wrath from afar, push someone off a cliff, why not? Big AoE, sure. Push someone down, okay. Giant golden arc, very strong initiator, does holy damage, goes through walls, kind of, if you aim it at a particular way. The same way that we figured out Glintstone Arc does. Very fun to use with Glintstone Arc, but they don't do different enough things for one to, like, complement each other. They still look cool, though. I did it for a little while on my all-magical character because they could. But, yeah. Those are things. We do melee. I have fire coils, they scale really well with Faith. Freezing pots because they stun people, as I mentioned earlier. We got the Faith bonus. Well, the Millicent's prosthesis is mostly because we can, and not because we need to. Like, there's a point where you reach a certain amount of endurance where 1.6 weight and 0.9 weight are not that much different. Like, 1 point of endurance isn't going to change that. So, like, you need 1 more point either way. Other, it gets to, like, 70.02% equipment. It's weird. And then the only, like, hefty pot that scales really well with Faith is the Furnace one, so that's why we got the Furnace one on here. And I guess that's it for that. Spell slot configuration. You should put your spells like that. Ideally, it's up to you, but I recommend doing it this way, so that you can have them in an order that is really useful. Oh, we're just getting started. Okay. So next you assess the situation. Figure out where you are, where the host is, you know, you look at the compass. How many people there are, you can, if you're on PS5 or PC, I think, you can check that. What equipment they have, who has the lowest health defenses, where strong PvE is located, such as like a Fire Knight, a Golem Archer, the Draconic Sentinel, the Faramazula has a lot of those Beastmen, especially the Cleaver ones, those are really effective. The ones that throw projectiles too. You definitely want to have like Lanedale Knights, because a lot of them have great shields and lightning stuff, and a couple of the Great Bow ones. The Great Bow Knights, you definitely want to keep those around, very helpful. You want to make sure that which way to go if you need to get away from multiple opponents rushing after you. You need to make sure you don't fall off a cliff. You need to make sure you don't get stuck in a choke point, like there's an archway, like elevators, ladders, doorways, jump requiring sections, such as in a cave. There's all those like disjointed stairways that you have to jump up. You need to be aware that these are over there. There's one specifically in the perfumer's cave that hits me every now and then because there's like a log, and then there's like no good enemies in there. Doorways, you don't want to get stuck with like a closed door. You don't want to get stuck in an area you can't open to allow you to keep running away. You don't want to get stuck on a ladder because people can hit you down from that very easily. So having to climb one, you need to hurry up. You don't have time for that. Or like the other way around, you need to know, oh, they can't get away from me because there's a ladder there. I can just throw a volcano pod at them. It'll hit them multiple times and they'll fall down. Or I can just use Night Maiden's Mist on them. It'll hit them multiple times and they'll fall down. Or I will throw knives at them and I'll hit them multiple times and they'll fall down. Or I'll hit them really hard and one-shot them and there's no way they can dodge it because they're on the ladder. You know, things like that. And the elevators. You need to be aware of elevators. Because a lot of things, a lot of spells don't work on elevators. Some Ashes of War, like Waves of Darkness, don't work on elevators. The Frenzied Flame Thrust from Vike's War Spear doesn't work on elevators. Not all of them, anyway. There's some elevators that are exceptions. It's really weird. But the reason is because, I believe, there's no floor underneath them, and they're a moving object. So they can't spawn a projectile or like a ground-based thing on it because it's not stable. So yeah, that messes that up. Assess the situation, you want to know the defenses, you want to find who the targets are. So prioritize targets. This one's really easy. There's 4 different types of targets. There's your isolated target, which are people who wander off on their own, who are at least a short distance away from other players. It'll take a moment for people to come and gang up on you when you attack this person. They're by themselves, essentially. Everyone else is far away from them. You need to be aware, if you are currently under attack, that then going after an isolated target will also bring the people who are attacking you over to the isolated target, and therefore they're no longer isolated. So that doesn't count. And that is the exception to the aggressive player. So next are casters, the level 2 priority. They have the ranged advantage, and they usually have lower health with no hyper armor because in order to cast, you have to be one-handed. Or use the new Carrion thrusting sword, but that doesn't have hyper armor. Technically they have like Gavel of Haima. You should be aware of things that do have hyper armor, such as Gavel of Haima, Crystal Release, Briars of Sin. I'm going to make a video that tells you about all sorts of utilities like that. Right now we're talking about how I do invasion. These are all the things I think about automatically while I'm invading. So the level 2 priority for people to attack before anyone else are the casters. If they are from a distance shooting at you, and you can tell that their health looks a little low, or their defenses look a little low, and they don't have like a colossal sword, you need to go after them because they can hit you in the back, and you need to prevent them from having that opportunity. You need to put pressure on them. Keep everyone close to the caster so that the caster has to watch out for accidentally getting caught in your attacks. Or you need to be able to hit the caster. The caster can't shoot projectiles like Star Shower after you. If they're using Star Shower, you 100% have to focus on them, because there's no guaranteed way to dodge Star Shower unless you do something really specific, such as Miriam's Vanishing, Bloodhound Step, Quick Step, I think, Eternal Darkness, which doesn't last very long, Thop's Barrier, which isn't very effective against it, or like you block it with the shield that has very high magic defense. Yeah. Level 3 targets are aggressive players. These are some of the more important targets that you need to be careful of, because they will actually rush you down. They're more likely to stay close to you when they're at 50% health, which means it's easier for you to take them out for being greedy. So they can very easily become level 2 or level 1 isolated, or like they can become level 1 isolated targets because they'll rush you and then they'll stay next to you while they're low health. And they'll be greedy. They're just trying to hit you, to pressure you, to stop you from attacking the other ones. So you may need to prioritize these over farther targets because they will chase after you. Which is why I brought that up. When you're going after an isolated target, the aggressive player might make it so they're not isolated anymore, so therefore you need to deal with the aggressive player instead. So technically an aggressive player is one of the more important targets. But you don't need to fight them over these other targets because you should be able to dodge them more easily unless they're very skilled and actually trying to roll catch you. So the idea is you will accidentally kill them because they're being too aggressive, or they will back away from you because they've taken too much damage. So that brings us to level 4 target. The lowest level of target is low health targets. Players who have taken significant damage are much harder to hit because they're more cautious, so it is recommended to instead use their lack of aggression to target other players and accidentally hit them when they think you aren't looking. Because sometimes they're out of heals, or they're trying to stop you from killing their squishy caster characters, their spellcaster or the host. So instead of healing, sometimes they will attack you. And you will accidentally kill them because you notice they're coming behind you because you know that I just told you they will do this thing where they will forego their own safety to stop you from killing their friend. So you will know that that's going to happen, and then you hit them as they run up behind you, and they die. So always target the host over phantoms unless you intend to fight everyone. This is an extreme example that does happen, including potential blue summons, red betrayers, and resummoned phantoms. So it is always a good idea to go after the host instead of the phantoms, because the phantoms are usually much tougher than the host. Which is disappointing. But it is the truth. The host is typically the caster, and a lot of the time they're the isolated caster. So they're a very high target. So not always, though. Sometimes they're aggressive, and then again, they get isolated, and then they die. So do not run in against 3 people who are all next to each other, unless you have a good chance of taking one down immediately. Moments such as that include a very powerful build, or you have the opportunity to hit them because they don't know that you're there yet. Or one of them is AFK, they're just kind of standing there, they're not sure what's happening. Or you can tell they're looking through their menu, trying to switch to like their PvP weapon. Basically, if they're just kind of standing there, and you're like within attack range, you should attack them and see what happens. But if they act like a wasp nest that you just kicked over, and they all start rushing at you, don't say that I didn't tell you not to do that. So that's the idea. If you feel like you can kill one of them very quickly, go ahead and try, but be ready for them all to attack you. So next is to execute the game plan. Attempt to use the element of surprise. You need to consider that the element of surprise is one of your most powerful abilities as an invader. They might know that you're coming to get them, but they don't know where you are yet unless you're right next to them, and they don't know that you're gonna try to blow them up from a long range, or that you have the concealing veil on, or that you're gonna wait right here until they come to you, and then you're gonna stab them as they go around a corner. They don't know that, so you need to use that against them. So gather information on your opponents without revealing your location, or attempt to strike the moment they're engaged with or near a strong enemy. So sometimes when they attack a strong enemy, all of them are attacking that enemy at once, so they'll kill it very quickly. So if you know that they're coming up to one, it's sometimes a good idea to interrupt them fighting that enemy before they get to it. Because then 2 of them might break off to fight the enemy because they know it's strong. And usually the one that breaks off, it's the host. Which is funny, because the host is going after you, the invader. So you quickly dispatch the host, or you dispatch whoever goes after you. And then you fight the other 2 who are now weakened from fighting that enemy. Hopefully. Hopefully. The point remains, it's a good idea to use enemies as a distraction. Or as, your ally. To fight alongside. So, 2. Focus isolated targets where possible. We talked about isolated targets. If one of the players is around 20 meters away from the others, then they are a prime target to take out before they can receive backup. There is an exception, which we have been talking about, where you are currently under attack. You should prioritize the ones attacking you. Now, that is the aggressive exception, because, again, the aggressive players will follow you after the isolated target. You shouldn't do this unless you can feel confident that you are going to destroy the isolated target before the person attacking you can roll catch you or interrupt what you're doing, catch up to you, and stop you from doing that. And you should almost always just don't do that. Just fight the one enemy. Get something in between you and the caster. And focus on the guy who's being aggressive. If they stop being aggressive, then you need to do this next part at the 4th step. So we'll get to that. So, part 3. Analyze targets' movements to gauge their combat ability. Immediate tells of a player's ability is whether they can prevent a roll catch situation. If they perform backstep attacks, if they switch between weapons, or if they run in a circle around you at a very specific 6-meter distance. Now, I wouldn't say it's exactly 6 meters, but the idea is they stay outside of your attack range. Specifically, your running attack range. They will stay perfectly outside of that range. And if they can do that, you need to be aware this opponent is a bit tougher than a normal opponent. And you need to consider them to be a very dangerous target. And you need to keep track of what they're doing at any given moment. Now, there can be more than one of these, and typically it's the phantoms. But it can also be the host. Especially if they're ganking in an area such as Liurnia or Limgrave. You need to be aware. You can't treat them like a normal target. And at that point, the only thing that can really benefit you is experience. You need to have fought opponents like that before. You need to know what they're going to do and punish them for doing it. You need to know, can you jump over the attack? Is your opponent going to mind game you and use our own game plan against us? And can you, therefore, do something you shouldn't do to prevent their game plan from working? To stop them from roll catching you? To stop them from punishing your attacks? And instead, just stand there and do nothing. The most effective thing you can do as an invader is walk away. Just don't. You don't have to fight them. If they are not progressing, there's no need to fight them. Go set up your element of surprise. Make it so that they have to deal with you. You don't have to deal with them. They have to deal with you. They are going to get tired of you. And that is a good thing. Because their point is to go through the game. To progress through the level. Your point is to be part of the level. To add to the difficulty of their ability to progress. Which they took away by adding in more intelligent players. And that is the fun part of invading. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, this is how I do it. So, systematically take down targets. Lower a target's health by 20 to 30%. This is within a range that they will not want to restore their health, because it will be a waste of their Crimson Flask. It will not heal the full potential of their Crimson Flask's healing capability. Exceptions are when they have less than 1,000 hit points, or less than 1,400 hit points. Sometimes even less than 1,700 hit points. It depends on what level you're at, but if they have less than 1,400 hit points and you lower their health by 20 to 30, you can probably one-shot them, so. That's why you lower their health a little bit by doing some sort of chip damage. You can test how much health they have by using a throwing knife and kind of glancing at whatever health they have left after that. So push away your aggressors by doing 45 to 100% damage to them, which means if people are being aggressive, they are a priority 3 target, unless, you know, they're being very aggressive and you have to deal with them because they will make an isolated target no longer an isolated target. And they themselves may technically be an isolated target, so they would become the priority, especially when their health is super low. So pressure the target again, the one you're going after, who you did 20 to 30%, when your health, your own health, is 85 to 100%. For the same reason that we're lowering their health, we need to make sure our health stays up. Okay? Because they, much more easily than we could, can quickly take you from 85% to 10%, or 5 or 0%, if you leveled your health properly. So you want to stay as healthy as you can. You want to stay a little bit above that. That's why 85, not 80%, 85%. You want to look at your health bar. You have like this little, you have this health bar, right? If you suddenly lost, not that, this much health, right? That's a teeny bit of damage. It's just a little bit. But if you lost like this much health, now you're in danger. You could lose this much health during the next attack, right? So yeah. How do I go? I don't think I can. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you need to make sure your health stays up, because at that point, when you have 10% left, they could tickle you and you would die. So you want to make sure your health is high. Effectively causing priority targets to be isolated by deterring aggressors while avoiding projectiles from casters. So you want to sort of do a dance. You need to dance. The aggressive targets are rushing you, becoming isolated targets, and leaving their casters isolated. So you need to prioritize the aggressor, because the aggressor is the one actually attacking you with a weapon, which means they know how to use it. Because most of the time, casters just kind of push buttons, shoot comets at you. You can dodge those by walking out of the way. So at a distance, you walk away, you make sure you are at... You have the 3-dimensional awareness, is what I call it. You know which direction the spellcaster's coming from. You know if you walk at a 90-degree angle from the caster, that the caster will not hit you. So you do that while fighting the aggressor, who's in front of you. You want to keep perpendicular to the caster. So, you move backwards, the caster misses you, you punish what the aggressor's doing, the aggressor gets away from you, you either finish off the aggressor depending on how much health they have left, or you start pressuring the caster so they stop shooting at you. Now, if they bring out Star Shower, the caster becomes a priority. Or if they have something similar to that, such as Collapsing Stars, Fire Serpent, something you can't just walk out of the way of, right? A more complicated spell. Then you attack the caster. But you can also still push the aggressor away from you. So, you push the aggressor, they lose a bunch of health. You go after the caster, you stop them from spamming magic at you. You get your health back up to 85-100% while avoiding the aggressor who is now back on you. You perhaps take down the caster if their health is at a low enough amount, and then you perhaps take down or have to now chase after the person who is being aggressive. In this big 3-dimensional cubicle dance. The triangular dance, honestly. Because if there's 3 people, you shouldn't be trying to do this at all. You cannot fight 2 aggressors while someone is a caster shooting at you. Do not do that, unless one of the aggressors can die very quickly. Or we have other allies. And even then, you cannot rely on other allies. Such as, you know, a Fire Knight. To actually stop the opponent from attacking you for a brief moment. You have to make sure that you put something in between you and the third player. You cannot fight 3 people. Don't do it. It's possible. I'm telling you it's not, but it is. because it's very risky. So you only want to have a 3-dimensional fight. You don't want to have a 4-dimensional fight where 2 people are attacking you in an impossible to dodge way. So yeah. 7. Combat. Depends entirely on your weapon, ash, and utility choices. This is a general breakdown. You want to start with your initiator. We talked about these extensively, I'd like to think. We also have Ashes of War that I haven't mentioned. I will talk about these in the future. I will make a video specifically to tell you which Ashes of War, consumables, and sorceries, incantations are useful initiators. But right now, you want to use an attack with a lot of range, or something you can follow behind, to close the distance between you and your target. Part 2, you want to knowledge check people. You want to apply pressure using attacks that can roll catch, which is typically your running light attack or your running heavy attack. If you're using a straight sword one-handed, I recommend the running heavy. If you're using a halberd, I recommend the running light. Doesn't matter if it's one-handed or two-handed. Two-handed has hyper armor though, which is insane. If you're using a colossal sword, the running light attack is a giant sweeping motion. People can jump over some of these, not the straight sword one-handed. But if you're using a colossal weapons are not so great. You want to use the running two-handed, maybe one-handed light attack. There are instances where if someone panic rolls twice, you can roll catch the second roll because you know that they're going to do that. I will give a video about that too, I guess. You will adapt as the target begins avoiding them, which is to say if their health is low or they got hit and now they know you're just doing that, they will start to learn. Not all the time, but the fact remains you need to be ready for that. Stop when the target is one hit from death, as they tend to focus, and you need to see what they'll do. Maybe give them some distance and see if they'll try to heal, and then attempt to punish that, which will cause them to panic again. So, if someone is low, you need to back off sometimes. Like, if you're trying to hit them, you don't want to be in recovery frames when they are trying to heal. Unless you know that you have fast enough recovery to then punish them trying to heal. Which is the case sometimes, especially for like a halberd, or an S-stock, or a straight sword, yeah. But if you do like a running heavy, a jumping heavy, you got a lot of recovery after that. They're going to be able to heal, and you're not going to be able to punish it. But if you do punish it, they're going to panic again, which allows you to roll catch them again, which allows you to kill them very easily. So that is the idea of the knowledge check. You need to put them in ultimatums, using your initiator, running behind it, force them to dodge, and then punish their dodge. You need to roll catch them. When they realize you're doing that, you need to mix it up, change the timing, do a different attack. Don't do a jump attack most of the time, because jump attacks are very recovery heavy. And maybe you could switch to a different weapon, do a crouch attack, run up, wait for them to roll. Some weapons can reaction roll catch. Other times you have to just make them panic. Make them panic. You want them to panic. Strike fear into their hearts. Okay, so again, systematic takedown is part 3. Lower your priority target's health by 30%. Create or find an opening to rush them down while keeping your own health high enough to not die in 2 to 3 hits. If unsuccessful in removal of target before other targets recover, back off and try again until restorative resources are depleted and opening will present itself. So again, what we said earlier in this part, lower their health, keep your health high, go after targets, back away when it's too much, especially when it's a 3v1. When it's a 3v1, you need to be especially careful of that. You want to stay as far away from one of the players as you can, while also fighting the other two in a sort of dance. It's very difficult. I understand, it's very difficult. I do it for fun. I have like 4,000 something hours in Elden Ring. That really doesn't matter though. So, then improvise. The final part, the 8th step. When you're overwhelmed, it helps to have a plan ready ahead of time. Using previous methods, we can prepare a general idea of what to do when unexpected moments happen. These unexpected moments, examples are when PvE hits you. So if you find out there's suddenly a golem hitting you in the back, the most useful thing you could do is back away and let them kill it. Because it's now in your way, it's doing a lot of damage, it's another thing you need to keep track of. There is a possibility for you to force them to get hit by it, by stunning them when it's attacking, but you would need to be aware that the golem is doing that. And you can't exactly control it. You can't stop it from hitting you. The reason it hits you is because it's going after them. They're in front of you, you're in front of them. The golem hits you. And they can see it and you can't, because it's behind you. But there are moments where it's the other way around, but the fact remains, it hurts. Don't get hit by it. Get away. Wait for it to go. So, there's also environmental hazards. When environmental hazards hit you, such as the ones at Mount Gelmir, maybe lava, or in one of the catacombs, the fire plumes, you want to be aware of that. You want to know these are over here. There's like rot. You need to be careful. Environmental hazards will mess you up, just as much as they'll mess up anyone else. So you can force the opponent to have to deal with it. And they can't get rid of it, so it's always going to be a thing. Sometimes you can ignore it because you have health and they don't. Sometimes it like keeps you from killing them, or it hits you in the back and you die because of it. You need to be aware that environmental hazards are a thing. And the game is just for fun. It's okay. There's moments like that. You can use them to your advantage, such as the chariots. A lot of the time it forces people into small locations. You can fill that small location with a lot of explosions or a very powerful hyper armor attack. You know, you could just dragon breath them. Who cares? So, you use those environmental hazards to your benefit. But you need to be aware that they're there. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. You need to be careful when blue phantoms show up, especially when they show up at the worst time, right? When you're pressuring the host, right? You just got all your recovery, and then a blue phantom spawns like right there. The message pops up after they hit you, and suddenly you're fighting two opponents again. The host runs away. You maybe kill the blue, or the blue's like the best blue in the world, and they're like an arena player, and they got like Claymore, Piercing Fang, and they're like, oh, I thought you were a noob, and like, aha, point down. I don't know. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. You don't have to be ready for it, but you need to know that it could happen. And you need to be ready to improvise. And that's what we're doing right now. We're planning for those moments to happen. So, when a blue phantom shows up, you go back to playing based on the methods we just talked about. You go back to treating it like, okay, 2v1. Lower the health by 20 to 30. Pressure them when they're isolated, go after the isolated guy. If one of them's being aggressive, that becomes a priority. Watch out for the caster, continue to fight them like that. And then another one comes in, you do it again, and sometimes it's just what happens. Sometimes you just have to be a Terminator. You need to be ready to kill that guy, and then go after this guy, and then another guy gets in the way, and you need to kill that guy. And then a girl gets in your way, and you need to kill that girl. And then, like, a giant boar comes in the way, and you gotta get out of the way of the boar, because you can't kill the boar because it's too big. Who knows? So sometimes multiple opponents will rush you down with powerful projectiles. And when that happens, it's okay to panic. There's not a whole lot you can do about that, especially if they're at alternating times, or they're, like, say you run into a group of gankers. All of them have bone bows, and all of them have sleep arrows. There's nothing you can do about that unless you have a very, very specific counter, such as the Cherishing Fingers, Stormwall Parry Shield, what is that? The thing that's the Split Leaf Greatsword from Dark Souls 3 did, which reflects projectiles. You could use Zamor Ice Storm. You need something that deflects projectiles. And even then, you might still get slept, and then you just can't do anything. The best thing you could do is panic, get behind something, and then run away. And then try to take one of them out using projectiles yourself. When a red phantom turns against you, like this has happened several times to me. Red phantom co-invaders are not to be trusted. I don't know why. I don't know, like, how they can't have suffered so much that when they see another red, they're like, oh my god, a friend. Someone who can help me. They're like, oh my god, an enemy, a red. I could get runes from them, or like I need to kill them. They might stab me in the back. You know, you need to be ready for that. You need to keep the red in your sights as much as the other, and alternatively, you also need to be careful not to hit them. Don't do big, wide swing attacks. Make sure to complement their own playstyle. Follow up behind them. One of you needs to be the aggressor, the other one needs to be the supporter. You don't want to get in each other's way. Something you could do, if the other red seems to be very aggressive, you can just try to get in front of where the host is trying to go to. Try to flank them. Make sure to use their own strategies against them. Something that happens very often is the phantoms and the host will try to get behind you. One of them will be behind you, the other one will be in front of you. You can't keep both of them in view, right? You want to prevent that from happening. So if you use that idea against them with a co-invader, it's going to work the same way. So that's one of the best things you can do when you have a co-invader. Now, if they're attacking you, do not be afraid to kill them. If they're attacking you, they are the enemy. You can try to prove this to them, that you are friendly. It doesn't typically get through to them. All they see is, I can lock onto you, therefore I have to attack you. So you just kill them. If they hit you, and it's on purpose, if they're like locked onto you, you can see them moving with you when you move, just kill them. Just don't worry about it. It sucks, but you gotta do that sometimes. So when you encounter a duelist host, it's up to you if you want to duel them. It's not required as an invader. You do not have to fight people, especially if they're in a boring location like Liurnia or Limgrave. Especially Liurnia though, because there's water everywhere, and they're probably using a lightning build, and if they have the rune arc active, it's up to you. Do you want to practice? Because you don't really need to. It's going to be a different skill set to do a 1v1 than it is to do a 2v1 or a 3v1. It's a different idea, because most of the time, a host is going to run away from you, not fight you. You need to be ready to stop them from running away from you. When it's a duelist host, they're going to fight you. When they're fighting you, though, they have way more advantages than you do. They could be up to 20 plus 10% levels higher than you. They could have their rune arc activated to have a massive health advantage, and they have twice as many heals as you, and there's no way for you to know that blue phantoms are coming in or not. Now, they probably do have blue phantoms coming in, so you need to be ready for that too. Because they have the Taunter's Tongue on, so another red is going to come in, and we get back into the situation where the red phantom could try to kill you because they think that it's your fault that the host is attacking you, that the blue phantoms are attacking you, and that they just want to duel and they just want to have fun, and everyone's against you suddenly, and you have to kill everyone, and it's just like this big mess, and like you just go. Just go hide somewhere. Do the thing where you could teleport using the phantom finger, turn off your internet, and then turn it back on. The host will not get rewarded for you leaving, and then just block them and leave. Just don't worry about it. It's not the idea of invading. You're not there to duel. You're there to stop their progression, to make it to become part of the environment, part of the difficulty of getting to the boss. So yeah, when fighting a skilled opponent, so if you run into a skilled opponent, again, a duelist is typically a skilled opponent. If you want to practice against them, okay. Now, if it's during an invasion, and it's 3v1, and you ran into a skilled opponent, we have to go into that previous idea where suddenly have to do things that you might not, you might think you're not supposed to do, in order to mix up the opponent, because they start respecting you because you avoided their attacks, so they think you're a skilled opponent. So now you need to stop being a skilled opponent, and you just need to mash into them, and then you need to notice when they pull a shield out, you need to punish them for trying to parry you, you need to play a little smart and a little dumb at the same time. It's very complicated. If you run into a cheater, you need to have percentage damage. It's not always going to work. If it doesn't work, your best thing is to get away, inflict sleep on them, death blight them if you really can. Like if you have Fia's Mist or you have the Eclipse Shortle, that will cause them to panic. If you run into an AFK farmer, there's nothing you can really do about it. You can try to get them unless they're in specific locations that I won't mention. There's methods. This is why you should always have a cannon. If you run into a cheater, the best way to kill them is Death Blight. But it's still not guaranteed. If someone's using maybe Chainsaw, you want to interrupt them. Use a shackle, like Margit's or Mog's shackle. And that will cause them to go into combat, which will cause them to use stamina. And I don't know. I don't know if that actually works. You can also try to shoot them with a cannon. Something similar to hit them out of it so that they have to set it back up again. So yeah, there's methods. It's not required. If you lose to a cheater, don't feel bad. Just block them, tell me, and I'll put them on the list. So, if you forget a part of your build, you're gonna have to improvise. If you forgot, oh, I added this new thing on here. I don't know how to use it yet. I forgot it was here. That's okay. There's not a whole lot you can think about. Like, there's a lot to think about already. I do it sometimes. That's why it's on here. If you forget, oh, my attack has hyper armor. Oh, I took off that so that I could fit this on. Oh, I lowered my health so that I could have more endurance. You know, it happens. It happens. You forgot part of your build. You need to improvise now. Maybe you need to get away, remember how to play, slap your head, and then get back into it, you know? You need to take a breather every now and then. You can't just run in there. Sometimes the game plan is not ready. You know, you're not ready to go in. You need to remind yourself, go over these steps again, and get ready. You know, you could just leave. Leave, reevaluate, and then go again. Or just hide, think about it, be like, okay, get some water, calm yourself down. I know that when I need to warm back up, get back into invasions, my heart beats like 150, 140. I think I've caught it at, I'm not sure. But yeah, just chill out. Remember what you're doing. Go through the list. Prioritize your targets. Get some information. Use the stealth. You'll get back into it. It's fine. If you run out of heals, you can wait. Maybe a blue phantom will come by. You can kill them, take their heals. You can restore to a certain extent. You need to play more cautiously. I'm not sure if there are any hosts who are smart enough to realize that you're out of heals. But there's always the possibility. Especially gankers. Gankers, other players, they probably don't notice. It's very obvious when you're low health and you're not getting your health back, so... Other than that, you can be very... You can punish their greed, do turn and burns. I don't do it very often because I don't find it too particularly fun, and it's a bit risky because people have so many projectiles. But if you do a turn and burn, you can get them down 20-30%, have them chase after you, finish them off when they get isolated, and just follow the same idea, the game plan. You get a heal back, and then you can go after the host. You just need to play a bit more patiently, because they'll be playing more aggressively when they realize you're out of heals. So, that's it. That's everything. That's how I invade. It's very complicated, I know. That's why all of this is here. You can look back over it whenever you want. You can disregard it entirely and say you'll do whatever you feel like. You can not even watch the video and skip to the end, or the part that you feel like you're having difficulty with, be very confused, and then have fun not knowing what you're doing, and just live in the ignorance, and that, honestly, is something people are jealous of, you know? If you can just do whatever and have fun. That's the important thing, so if that's what you feel like doing, I'm not going to stop you. I recommend it. You should do whatever you want. Say, screw Pally. Pally doesn't know what he's doing, or it doesn't matter if Pally knows what he's doing. I know what I'm doing, and I'm gonna do what I feel like, and I'm gonna have fun doing it. So yeah, just do that. It's like, none of this applies to a dueling. Like, it kinda does, but not really. Especially like if you're trying to have fun, you know? My great bow build, that's not a dueling build. It's a shoot you from a long range and take away all your health build. So yeah, invasions are different from duels. But you can make them the same. You can make them similar. That's not what I do. I'm telling you how I do it. So that's, if you want to find someone who does duels and you want to copy that, that's not what this is. So thank you for watching. That's gonna be it from me. Stay tuned for my my resource videos, which will explain like very specific things, such as initiators, which is probably gonna be the first one. Okay.